Good afternoon. I'm Bob Morgan, President of the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce, and appreciate all of you being here on relatively short news. I'm going to kick us off with a letter that was sent to Senator Berger and Speaker Tim Moore yesterday afternoon, the result of an action taken by the Charlotte Chamber's Executive Committee last week. And Ned Curran, who is the 2016 chair of the Charlotte Chamber, is then going to follow with some additional comments to, again, Senator Berger and Speaker Moore. Our purpose in writing this letter is to express our strong recommendation that you permit cities in North Carolina, like Charlotte, the right to pass ordinances that would extend protections to individuals within the LGBT community. It is our collective opinion that towns and cities across our state have diverse needs, and that in limited circumstances it makes sense to allow cities to decide if they want to bolster their non-discrimination laws and regulations, including protections for members of the LGBT community. We also continue to call on the City of Charlotte to participate in a process that we hope leads to reforms to HB2 that advance our city and state as places where discrimination is not tolerated for anyone. And that's signed by Ned Curran and myself representing the Charlotte Chamber Executive Committee. This letter was approved by a vote of 24 to nothing with 1 abstention. Ned?
This letter is reflective of a long and significant effort by the Charlotte Chamber to perform in a role of a shuttle diplomat, if you will, between Raleigh and between City Council in an effort not just around this letter but in other communications and efforts to advance the rights of all people in our city, including members of the LGBT community. It has been our goal to work with the legislature and work with the city to try and fashion solutions and compromises that would enhance the rights of members of the LGBT community while also advancing non-discrimination for all people. We'll continue to work with this letter. We'll continue to work with the city and with the legislature during the short session in the hopes that we're able to achieve something that can break an impasse between these two bodies.
And we've got to take questions.
So what has the response been so far?
We have an acknowledgement of receipt of the letter at this time, and we expect to be following up now with some conversations with the legislative leadership.
What did the action or non-action, as it may be, by the City Council last night, what does that do to the process?
We're clearly very disappointed that the council did not find some manner to take some action that would be a signal to the legislature that they are trying to work together with that body. It certainly makes efforts such as this harder, but we don't think it makes them impossible, and we'll continue to roll up our shirt sleeves and go to work.
Have both sides indicated that they are willing to compromise at this point at any rate?
First group to publicly be asked to demonstrate a willingness to do that was the City Council. So it makes it harder that that group chose not to take some formal action in that regard. Again, I would say it's not over, it's not impossible. We'll continue to work, and we'll continue to try and find ways to bridge the relationship and the gap.
It doesn't seem that the Chamber is really taking an active role with the local LGBT community and communicating with them as a member of that community. And I'm just kind of curious, what would a compromise look like? Right now, it's very clear that HB2 was passed to nullify the Charlotte Non-Discrimination Ordinance. So what compromise is there?
You know, we met with the HRC last week.
They're not a local organization or a local community group. There's many other local LGBT leaders.
Local representatives in that meeting. It was a very civil conversation. I would characterize it as constructive at the time of the conversation. There was unanimity in that room that this is a nationalized issue, that the full breadth of rights for the LGBT community will likely be resolved at the federal level, likely through the court system. It'll probably go beyond the bathroom issue. And generally everyone in there had about the same time frame. It would probably be 5 years. So the question is, what is the strategy between now and then? And the message we heard from the HRC is that to the extent that there is further destruction in the economic base and hurting of low-wage individuals that are associated with hospitality work and the like, that if that's necessary as a symbolic element, both for North Carolina and for the nation, that's a strategy that they're all right with.
Yeah.
From our perspective, it was we seek to restore some of the rights of members of the LGBT community between now and 5 years out. So our approach is to try and benefit members of the LGBT community now and not wait 5 years.
That would be, the HRC is a national organization. It has national and local members here in Charlotte. I understand that. The question becomes, the follow-up question is, the local LGBT community does not want anyone to boycott Charlotte or boycott the state. We've been very clear on that, right? But a compromise, the idea of a compromise to basic human rights is very disturbing, and the Charlotte Chamber and its members, which include companies that are very LGBT inclusive, seem out of step as far as their messaging around that and asking for a compromise.
Well, let's be clear. There are fewer protections for the LGBT community today than there were before the ordinance was passed. And there's an opportunity in the short session, potentially, to extend. The request is to give municipalities the right to go further than the state may be willing to go on a statewide basis. We have a formal partnership with the Charlotte LGBT Chamber of Commerce. We have members who are part of the community. We've erred on the side of discretion in the lobbying and the conversations that have been taking place previously. We've made some public statements. We've had some conversations with some members of the community. Those conversations have intensified in recent days, and we're obviously being more public as we stand here today.
To follow up a little bit on that, so from your standpoint, you want to see some room for cities to actually have enough ordinances. I guess, what reason do you have to believe that legislative leaders are ready to make any of those changes? To this point, they have stood fast by what is in House Bill 2. Why is it that Charlotte should put its trust at their whim?
We've just been engaged in numerous conversations at numerous levels of state government, and we have some degree of optimism that there may be some room for some enhancements along the way that would make it better.
Does that include with some of the top legislative leaders?
Correct.
Isn't time running out?
Yes, we're under a lot of pressure. We're in a short session. That's the opportunity to get something done. And so I think we have perhaps 3 to 6 weeks to try and achieve something.
And in your role as a shuttle diplomat, as you put it, who are you talking with on each of the sides here, and what steps are you taking to facilitate them talking with each other?
We're talking to anyone and everyone. We're certainly talking to leadership, and we are talking to people who are familiar with and associated with the law. And at the city level, we're engaged with city staff and with the mayor and members of the city council. And we help to facilitate some of the interactions that occurred there. And we hope to continue to try to facilitate some dialogue.
Did the Chamber Executive Committee take a vote on just asking for a repeal of HB2?
Chamber Committee discussed coming right out for repeal of HB2 early on. We looked at the actions of others, and we found it instructive that those that immediately called for repeal of HB2 were left without a voice and a seat at the table. So we took an action that said we would prefer to make it quite clear that this chamber does not advocate for discrimination of any kind for anyone, and that we're very clear on that, and that we intend to work very hard to try and advance the non-discrimination rights as evidenced by elements in this letter. And early on we did call informal conversation with the legislature for a repeal.
So all respect, sir, I think it's important to understand that in calling for a full repeal is different from asking for inclusion of LGBT people, right? So you have not called for a full repeal as the Charlotte Chamber. You have kind of tiptoed into it and then been working behind the scenes with really nobody locally as far as leaders in the LGBTQ community. So my question to you is, how do you move forward as a city that's trying to attract diverse businesses, right? Attract more customers, more locally recognized businesses, be a world-class city, right? Without asking for a full repeal of HB2. It's clear to me that this issue is being muddied by the Charlotte Chamber, right, by not taking a very direct saying, you know what, we need to repeal this to start all
Thank
over
you.
again.
Thank you.
I don't see how that's how a world-class city operates.
Yeah, I think I understand the question. So what you're suggesting is that there's a litmus test, and that litmus test is you must come out and immediately make a statement that you're for repeal of HB2. And then you also want to have a seat at the table to constructively try and work with your city and with your state to try and modify the legislation. And from our perspective, we made quite clear that we don't encourage or favor discrimination of any kind. I think it's quite clear where we stand on the issue of trying to advance the rights, of the LGBT community. So as I said in the meeting that we had last week, everyone agreed that in 5 years we hope to be at the same place. The only issue is the chamber wants to try and advance benefits for the LGBT community by the work we are doing now during that 5-year period. Whereas I would submit to you that those that are calling for a litmus test are failing to get any traction to try and make that better. So it's a cliff. At the end of 5 years, you hope to get your full benefits. We want to get to the same place in 5 years. We just want to make it better along the way.
3 more questions, guys, and let's make sure everybody has an opportunity.
Eric? Yeah.
Ned, we keep hearing that Fred Whitfield from the Hornets has been involved in at least some of these talks, and obviously AllStar Game is one of the big economic pieces out there. So what are you hearing from the NBA? What kind of timeline are you on in terms of the AllStar Game negotiation?
I'm not going to try and speak for Fred or for the NBA other than to suggest that professional collegiate level sports is very important to all of us, not just in the city, but also at the state level. Certainly the NBA All-Star Game is something that everyone is watching, and I think we all need to work very hard to try and do what we can to demonstrate to the NBA that we are a city that cares deeply about the rights of all citizens, that we care deeply about advancing the rights of the LGBT community, and that we're going to work very hard to demonstrate to the NBA that we want to go to work as one of their franchise cities to represent all people.
NFL leaders owners are meeting in town. Do you all feel that HB2 could prevent Charlotte from getting a Super Bowl, or do you think maybe the lack of hotel rooms would be an even bigger issue?
You know, I think those are motivating factors, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, whether it's a business that's thinking about locating here or a business considering expanding here. I think we all owe it to all of those people to demonstrate that we want to be an open and an inclusive city, and that we are, and we want to reinforce those elements, and that we're going to continue to work very hard to do just that.
Any final questions? Anybody that hasn't had an opportunity? Do you guys have final remarks that you want to make?
No, I would just, again, thank all of you for being here. I think it is significant that one specific solution would be to allow municipalities the ability to go further than the state might be willing to go on a statewide basis. And we would ask the City Council to join in calling for that action. And of course, we're calling on the legislature to give that very serious consideration as a solution that could help to limit the damage, some of which we have already experienced and more of which is at risk. Thank you.